Hello and welcome, friends, to the Long Night 2.0. It is Snowy Wisdom Sunday. Yes, that's the catchy jingle I came up with. Me as the marketing department in my brain. I am David Lightbringer, also known as LML at the Dragon LML on Twitter. David Lightbringer on Instagram. And folks, we're here to talk about how it's going to go. The new Long Night, the new War for the Dawn. We know it's coming. It's probably going to last more than one night, more than one episode's worth of action. As we know, the short night, as it shall ever be remembered from HBO, was a bit of a letdown. We do expect the long night in the books to last a bit longer, to be a little more involved, to be the climax of the story, all those things. We don't need to belabor the criticism of the show, but obviously the show was not nearly as invested in the magical side of things, and so they kind of didn't know what to do with the Long Night and the others. They showed us the creation of the Night King in Bran's vision, and they never did anything with that, etc., etc. They kind of just wanted to end that storyline so that they could get to the Cersei Dany stuff. And have Jon kill Dany because Dave and Dan are cynical bastards. But Merry Christmas, everyone. It's Christmas. We've got a Christmas tree here, and we're here. We're happy holidays. We're happy on the holidays. We're happy because the Long Night in the books will deliver a little more punch. No doubt. No doubt. So I would like to say thank you. I won't embarrass you by name, but I got this little weirwood tree present from Mythhead. I'll put it in the field of vision here, so it's with us today. We will need the power of the weirwoods in the north. All right, so folks, we're gonna do two things today, specifically War for the Dawn 2.0. I really wanted to get prepared for this, so I did a lot of research. I started listing where all the Valyrian steel weapons are. And what paths they could take to become involved in the War for the Dawn, how they could get up to the north, either to Winterfell or to the Wall, in time to be used against the others. We talked about, I made notes about, rather, so that we could talk about all the different characters who are going to be involved in the fight against the others, either joining Jon Snow for some sort of last mission north of the Wall. It's sort of, I call it the Long Night's Watch or the Last Watch, basically in imitation of the last hero and his dozen. It seems like there's a good chance we might get a similar type thing. Even the show gave it to us. The reason for their quest to go north of the Wall was suspect: to capture a white, to bring back to Cersei, to convince everyone the threat was real. That's not going to be a thing in the books, because when the Long Night falls, it will be a global darkness, not a regional darkness, not a cloud cover that follows the others around, but actually a blocking out of the sun. And of course, I'm counting on that being the result of some sort of new meteor attack or something like that, just as the original Long Night seems to have been caused by a meteor attack. Watch my Nightbringer series if you don't know what I'm talking about there. But that aside, the point is how even if it's not a meteor attack, we do know that the Long Night was a global darkness. And so when the Long Night falls again, it will again be a global darkness, which means everyone will know. From Dorne to the Wall, they will not deny it. Essos too. They will all know that the Long Night was here. It will be dark. The sun will be hidden. There'll be clouds everywhere. No, it wasn't a volcano, because the Doom of Valyria is the biggest volcanic explosion that you could possibly have in this world. It was only 400 years ago. It did not cause a Long Night. Therefore, it doesn't make sense to imagine that Martin is picturing an even bigger volcanic explosion that did cause a Long Night. All the clues are about meteors. Watch the Nightbringer series. But moving on, point is, however it happens, even if it's just a magical eclipse where the moon moves in front of the sun and just stops, that would only be dark for one little part of the world. So it really does have to be a cloud cover type thing. Like I said, if it's not a meteor attack, the one guess I would have would be that it would be some sort of snowstorm cloud cover that issues out from the heart of winter and just spreads around the whole globe and just blocks out the sun. That would be a little more irrational. That would be cool. But again, I do think the clues are about, why are we talking about moon meteors? Who got me started on moon meteors? The point is, everyone's going to know when the long night falls. Thus, there will be no need to go on a mission to capture a white to show people or anything like that. One thing that occurred to me yesterday also, by the way, about global darkness, it means that sailing is pretty much out of the picture. If you can't use the stars to navigate and you can't use the sun to navigate, it's going to be hard to sail. It is possible that the cloud cover will let you glimpse the sun a little bit. The sun might appear as a dim purple or gray disk occasionally behind the clouds. If you've ever seen like wildfire smoke cover or something like that, you can get stuff like that. So point is, sailing is going to be difficult if not impossible. So everybody, once they are where they are, the long night falls, where you are is where you are. You can't really sail from Essos to Westeros. You might not even be able to sail to the Iron Islands. That's arguable. Perhaps the Iron Islands sailors, like the sailors, someone like Asha Greyjoy, perhaps could blindly steer from the crag to Pike, which is a short distance. But in the darkness with no stars, it would be difficult. So yeah, people are saying you got to be really good. Exactly. That's kind of what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it'd be very, very difficult to sail anywhere. So it's only going to be someone like Davos or Asha Greyjoy, and on a short voyage. Long open sea voyages are out of the picture. You might be having to follow the coast, stuff like that. So yeah, compasses will help, but like if you can't see anything, you can't take your bearings. So once you leave, you're just going on direction. Like, do you have written directions to go from place to place by compass with no stars to help you? Like, so that's going to be difficult. So don't want to get into that too much, because I don't even think it's going to be that big of a factor. But it just sort of occurred to me that everything is going to be more difficult, including sailing. So there you go. Of course, people will also start to panic. As soon as the darkness falls, like all the animals will be wigged out, right? If you like during an eclipse, usually all the dogs start barking and stuff. That's been my experience, especially with a good total eclipse. I remember it very starkly about 5 or 6 years ago when we had a good total eclipse. All the dogs were howling. It's like, this ain't right. This ain't right. So that's what the long night's going to be like when it falls. But folks, what I'm got a little sidetracked here, setting the stage for the long night. The point is, there's a lot to talk about. Got the weapons. We've got all the characters. All right. A list of characters that could be involved either in Jon's mission north of the wall or just fighting the others. We do expect there to be multiple battles against the others. We'll see him fight him at the wall and Winterfell, possibly other places like the Trident. The others may be trying to get to the God's Eye. So there's a lot of people that could be involved in the fight against the others. We're going to go over those characters today. Then we've got the question of where the battles will be. Then we've got the question of what the others and the army of the dead, what their attack will actually be like. We kind of think we know, but the things in the book, there's some things that are different for what we saw on the show. So the point is, all December long, I'm going to be doing streams about wintry things, and they at least the first two are going to be about this long night 2.0. We're going to do swords and characters today, and then we're going to do battles and stuff next week. And we're also going to go over scenes which have symbolic foreshadowing of the long night battles, right? Like the Tower of Joy. Let's see, what are some other ones I have down here in my notes? So Jaime's dream with him and Brienne, Jon's dream of defending the wall, Daenerys in her last chapter, there's a wall that she compares to the wall of Westeros. She steps over it and smashes a bunch of ants. So that's an others foreshadowing scene. The Sandok, the Shadow scene from Fire and Blood, Maegor's trial by combat, Dunk's trial by combat, Jon and Corran going through the waterfall. There's a couple scenes in the Grove of Nine. So all of those scenes, I think, have symbolic clues about the new War for the Dawn. So we're going to be talking about this for a couple of weeks is the point. Today, we're starting with the swords. Depending on how long that takes, I may take a quick break and then start a new stream to talk about the characters. I've got the full presentation with art and all that stuff like I have been doing recently for both of those things. So Let's start with Valyrian steel weapons and see where we get. Like I said, if we get through this quick, then I'll just go right to the characters. If not, I'll stop the stream. I'll start a new one. I'll share it with you guys in the chat. We'll give it like a 10-minute break, and then we'll start again, just so I can have 2 different videos and not like one like 3-hour video, because that's a little easier for people to see. Last of all, you can support the program and send questions in, as always. PayPal.me, Mythical Astronomy. You don't even need a PayPal account. It's very easy to do. Or you can use the super chat function inside of YouTube. Either one of those work. And what would be great is if you could, when we're talking about swords here, suggest things about swords, ideas about which ones might get used, which hidden ones might reappear, anything like that. I'll have a place to talk about all that stuff. And if I don't get your super chat right when it comes in, or your PayPal, I do have those being written down in a document. So I will periodically check into those. So there will be no missed super chats or PayPals, thanks to the team here of mods. All right. So let's behold the map. Here's the map. Actually, I'm going to put it like this. So we're going to talk about where the Valyrian steel is. Yes, and praise Garth. It is 4:20 somewhere. Just off the, I think, what was that going to be? Mountain Time. Rocky Mountain High. Our first Valyrian steel weapon is actually not Valyrian steel. It is, of course, Dawn. Dawn is potentially the most important sword to think about in terms of the Long Night, because, of course, Dawn might be Lightbringer. Now, George has said, he has clarified that Dawn is, in fact, in Starfall. It's not in the Winterfell crypts or any weird place. It's in Starfall, quote, waiting for a new sword of the morning to rise. Now, of course, I've made a couple videos predicting that Darkstar is going to steal it. Makes a lot of sense. Stealing Dawn. Dawn is a sunrise. His name is Darkstar. So his whole name is about darkening the sun. So, of course, he's going to steal Dawn. Ba-da-da. The whole point is that Dawn is ultimately, if it's going to come out to play, it's probably going to be wielded by Jon Snow, or maybe even Daenerys, if Dawn actually has a magical purpose. If it's like a big milk glass candle, and that's its real deal, not necessarily chopping people, then maybe Daenerys will use it. Jon and Dany both have Dane blood going back a few generations. So lacking a proper sword of the morning, and with a long night having fallen, you can see Dawn getting put in the hands of Jon or Dany based on that blood connection. But I think it's more going to be about Darkstar stealing it, ending up in King's Landing as a member of Fagon's Kingsguard. And then when Dany attacks King's Landing, Dawn can pass into her hands so she can give it to Jon. That is my general headcanon about that. And let's put some Dawn artwork up on the screen because we can. This is by Mobo Bohm. Got a lot of windows open today, so bear with me here as I juggle. This is Mobo Bohm, a very famous picture of Sir Arthur Dane. It's got some beautiful detail on the blade there. Love this one. And of course, I modded this to make it look like it was on fire, because if Dawn is Lightbringer, it's going to catch on fire. It could be white fire or pale fire. It could be light, pale red, like a dawn, like a sunrise. Lightbringer is supposed to be red, of course. That's one of the main issues with Dawn being Lightbringer, is that it is not red and it is not warm. Lightbringer was said to be a red sword that's always warm to the touch. So, could be more complex issues there. And we'll go into my tinfoil about 2 Lightbringer swords. But suffice it to say, Dawn may very well be the kind of sword that can kill the others, presuming that Valyrian steel can. And by the way, that is an assumption that we're making. It is not known that Valyrian steel can kill the others. We're assuming that it can. We know that the last hero had a blade of dragon steel that he slew the others with. And it seems like that might be an allusion to something about the Great Empire of the Dawn, Azor Ahai having Lightbringer being sort of like a forerunner of Valyrian steel, something along those lines, right? So, dragon steel, it is a clue that steel made with dragons could potentially kill the others. It makes sense. Dragon glass kills the others because it has the power of fire infused in it. Because dragon glass is obsidian, it's literally cooled magma. And I have, of course, my dragon glass arrowhead on my pendant here just in case the others get close. I can poke them. And I got my dragon glass knife here as well. And there's a helicopter. And just in case the others really start to get smart, I, of course, have Foam Keeper, which we'll talk about Oath Keeper in a bit. But the point is, I am ready for the others. I've got my Night's Watch cloak. I'm prepared. So, yes, I'm ready to chop. That's right, Minty. I'm ready to chop. The others need to get chopped too. But you need Valyrian steel, not just a machete. So they're a little different than the squishers. Don't get me started. All right. Gosh, those squisher maidens sure are lovely. Anyways, so there's Dawn. Dawn is up on the board. It's there in Starfall, right? I could tell Cleo's not going to last long today. Next up is going to be the aforementioned Oathkeeper, kind of going in order of like the swords that we know the most about or the most important to us. Oathkeeper, of course, is one half of Ned's Ice. Let's put up some Oathkeeper artwork. This, of course, is by Ninja. And I've used this one a lot lately because we've been talking about Oathkeeper and Jaime and Brienne and their future and what's going to happen. And I did mean their future in a romantic way, of course, but also they'll be romantically battling the others, potentially. We're going to talk about that later when we talk about the characters who could be involved in the War for the Dawn. But there is Brienne with Oathkeeper. As you can see, black and red is the blade. This is a canonically accurate Oathkeeper. And I showed you guys Foam Keeper a minute ago. This is a foam Oathkeeper that I paint dipped. The paint is flaked off a bit. But if you look up paint dipping online, you can see what that is. It's spray paint in water, and then you dip it in there. And I tried to make it book accurate with the red and black. So, of course, that's important because, again, Lightbringer is said to be a red sword. George has taken Ned's Ice, split it in half, and dyed both of them red. So it's a strong clue that Oathkeeper and Widow's Wail will be involved in the War for the Dawn because they literally are colored red like Lightbringer. I see a PayPal coming in about Dawn. So let's mention that before we move on too far. What if Dawn is actually a blade that belongs to the others and not a Lightbringer, and the two are meant to be used in a duel? Just a thought. So I'm actually going to come back to that when we mention the two swords idea. At the end of this, I'll do some tinfoil sword ideas. But yes, I have said that at the very least, Dawn is the original Ice in that it is the sword the last hero used, and the last hero is probably a Stark. So then, even if Dawn didn't belong to the Starks, the fact that they used it to win the War for the Dawn, that thus begun their naming tradition of always naming their swords Ice. Because Dawn is a big white sword. It looks like a stick of ice. It literally does. The bones of the others are as pale as milk glass, just as Dawn is as pale as milk glass. So George is even asking us to compare Dawn to the symbolism of the others. And I've talked about that quite a bit. So it could be that Jon Snow getting his hands on Dawn will be a very bad thing. Perhaps this will be Jon Snow when he's stolen by the others under some sort of icy enchantment wielding Dawn. That would be terrifying. Yes, I'll get into that a little more at the end of this section. Dragon Nefertaria. Yes, thank you. Sorry, I got a little tongue-tied there for some reason. I know your name. I've talked to you before. One other piece of Brienne artwork. This one by Zippo514. I have modified it to add to add Lady Stone. I've added Oathkeeper to the picture of Lady Stoneheart because that is where Oathkeeper is. Boom. And the lines are off the pictures. Good suggestion. Thank you. Okay. So like I was saying, Oathkeeper currently is in Stoneheart's possession. Lady Brienne was set to hang by Stoneheart. She cried a word, which was sword, which means that she has agreed to do Stoneheart's bidding, which is essentially entrapping Jaime Lannister, bringing him into the cave so that Stoneheart can manipulate him, perhaps into giving up Riverrun or something else. So we know that there's a chance that Oathkeeper could get set on fire. I've talked about this a bunch of times. Of course, it is a red sword. It's Valyrian steel. It can handle the flame. Lady Stoneheart is a fire white. She's powered by R'hllor. So just as Beric lights his own sword on fire with his blood, we have every reason to believe that fire whites in general can do that. So it's possible Lady Stoneheart's fiery blood could be used to light a sword on fire, which would be Oathkeeper. And lastly, we know that Jaime and Brienne, Jaime had the dream. Let's see, where is it? Did I put Jaime's dream artwork in here? Oh, I didn't put it in here. Okay. Well, you guys have seen it before. We know Jaime has a dream of him and Brienne wielding flaming swords in a weird cave version of Casterly Rock. But of course, Stoneheart lives in a cave too. So we got the same two people in a cave with a Valyrian sword colored red and a fire white who probably needs to die. So we've talked about this scenario extensively, both in the Stoneheart Winds of Winter predictions, as well as the Winds of Winter predictions video we did last week. So I don't want to go on and on about this, but there's a good chance this sword could be lit on fire at some point. Oathkeeper. And whatever the case, the fact that it's a Stark sword and the fact that it is red, these are clues that it's going to be involved. And the last thing is, of course, Brienne. We're going to talk about Brienne later, but she's obviously a very valiant character. If she simply just wields it herself in the battle for the Dawn, that would be sweet. But of course, I do think there's an outside chance you could see Jon get his hands on Oathkeeper because it is his father's sword, in a sense. So I think Jorah potentially will get Longclaw back, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's reel it back in. There's Oathkeeper. It's up on the board. It's somewhere in the Riverlands there in Stoneheart's cave. Next up is, of course, Widow's Wail. Widow's Wail is in King's Landing. It belonged to Joffrey. Joffrey died. So presumably it has passed to Tommen. And it's just kind of chilling. But we know Tommen's probably going to die too, because of the prophecy that Cersei has about her children dying. Gold will be their shrouds. So again, this is another one, just like Dawn. Widow's Wail is going to be sitting in King's Landing well, first it's going to be there when Fagon gets there. Okay, so Fagon's going to take over King's Landing from Cersei. That's pretty clear. So Widow's Wail, it could pass into Fagon's possession there. Or perhaps Cersei could take it with her to the Rock, assuming she'll flee to the Rock. That does seem to be set up. I know there's a lot of headcanon here, but maybe she'll die. Who knows? But it seems like she's going to flee to the Rock, and she's going to be that Sauron Scouring of the Shire movement at the very end of the story, slinking back to King's Landing, and then having to be given the boot by the Starks, just as the hobbits come back to Hobbiton and kick out Saruman, who's taken up residence there. And this, again, I'm summarizing some stuff that George has said regarding the Scouring of the Shire and the ending of the books and stuff. So Widow's Wail's in King's Landing will probably pass into Fagon's possession, and that means it might eventually make it into Dany's hands when she battles Fagon at King's Landing. I'm going back for a super chat from a minute ago. Did I miss one? Oh, maybe I got it. Okay, I thought I missed one, but I did. Okay. No, I don't see it. Okay, let me pull that doc up. I have so many windows open. Oh my God, this is complex. One thing I will say while I'm pulling this up, I asked for more. I made a impassioned plea for leaving comments at the end of the last stream, the Winds of Winter predictions for every character stream, and you guys came through. There was kind of like, I'd say about double the normal comments that I usually get, and that helped the video big time. It is still going hard. It's one of my better live streams that I've done in a long time. So I just want to say thank you, and it really does make a difference. So please, again, on your way out of the stream today, make sure you leave a comment. You can it could be a simple thank you. You can say something you liked, something you didn't like, make a joke, whatever, some emojis. Any sort of comment helps. And the more people interact with the comments, the more that helps too. So if you see an interesting comment, go ahead and start up some conversation. But mainly just want to say thank you for coming through. It really did make a difference. So, all right. And it was a great stream. Yes, it was. We had a good time. So Widow's Wail, real quickly, I will just put up this piece of artwork here. This is Joffrey with Widow's Wail. Again, this is book accurate, canonically accurate. You see the red and black blade. Really like all the ornamentations. Nice piece of artwork. This is from Felicia Cano. So there's Widow's Wail. Again, I think Widow's Wail and Oathkeeper, they have to be, if we're going to see Valyrian steel swords used against the others, Widow's Wail and Oathkeeper are two of the safest bets, I would say. And I did see that super chat go by from the Spargmeister. I'm placing my bet that Euron has the, you're getting ahead of things. Brightroar, yes. Minty, can you put that one in the doc? I will get to that. Spargmeister, yes, I've got some ideas about Brightroar, so we're going to talk about that. And let's see, going back to the ones, the one I missed was from Michael James, and it was just a donation. Oh, there's also the Mighty Monarch. Let's see, do you think when Darkstar takes Dawn, he'll call, thank you, Michael James. When Darkstar takes Dawn, will he call himself the Sword of Morning? Mourning. No, I think he'll fully declare himself the Sword of the Morning. He's going to go full, like, fake Arthur Dane to match fake Rhaegar's son, Fagon. So, yeah, that's what I would think. You know, he says, I am Darkstar, I am of the night. No, maybe he'll call himself the Sword of the Evening. There was another Dane, Vorian Dane, who was a king. He was a king of the Torrentine when Nymeria came. He called himself the Sword of the Evening. So maybe Darkstar will call himself Sword of the Evening and wear black armor. But I do think he's going to join the King's Guard, though. It's too much of a powerful political symbol not to do it. Let's see. So let me take Joffrey down. Wait, the Queen of Thorns already took Joffrey down. Ha ha! Nice one. Good job, Queen of Thorns. Yes, that was a just act. Okay, so next up on the board is going to be Heartsbane. Heartsbane is also in King's Landing. Randall Tarly is carrying it around. That guy. Actually, this art is by Antonio Minez. It's just labeled Heartsbane. So we can imagine that's Randall or just some Tarly. But that is Heartsbane. HBO did a very cool Heartsbane. So I have to put that up here. If you remember, Sam had a moment where he went back and took it from Horn Hill. And that's interesting. Of course, in the books, it's not in Horn Hill. It's with Randall. But the fact that Sam took it and then gave it to somebody, Jorah, to use against the others, that makes sense. It shows you the show was thinking a little bit as far as, you know, we got to get these Valyrian steel swords in people's hands so they can be used against the others. I think that's the right idea. So Randall Tarly's got it in King's Landing. He was in like Maidenpool, I think. But when he heard about the accusations against Marjorie Tyrell, he raced back to King's Landing. he actually took custody of Marjorie from the Faith until her trial. So he is guaranteed to produce Marjorie for the trial. He has also been named the Master of Laws, I believe. And so, yeah, he's the Master of Laws. And so he's very powerful right now in King's Landing. He is Mace Tyrell's #1 general. And Kevin Lannister thinks he's more dangerous than Mace Tyrell, which is absolutely true. So the thing about Randall Tarly is that he very well might be the friends in the Reach that John Connington is talking about, who are ready to flip over to Team Fagon. And one of the big clues about this is that Tarly is running interference for Fagon in the small council meeting that we see through Kevin's POV at the end of A Dance with Dragons. He's like, oh, it's probably not even John Connington. They're just a few rebels. They're nothing. We don't need to worry about that. And it's kind of like, yeah, it's exactly what you would say if you wanted to leave the Lannisters, Team Lannister unprepared, while Fagon literally just sweeps the board on the East Coast, which is what he's doing. He's about to conquer Storm's End. So I do believe that there's a good chance Tarly is the one who's going to flip. But whether he flips or not, Hallstein is in King's Landing. Tarly could be sent out to Storm's End to battle Fagon, and that's where the flip could take place. So Hallstein could travel a little bit, but the point is, it's either going to remain in King's Landing with Randall, it's going to go out to battle Fagon with Randall, and eventually it'll probably be in Fagon's hands because Randall's probably going to flip to Fagon, or he's going to lose to Fagon. Because the whole point about Fagon being the Mummer's Dragon cheered by a crowd is that he's going to sit the throne. He's going to take the throne from Cersei. He's going to be popular. That's going to be a messed up thing for Dany when she gets there. A popular Fagon when she was expecting an unpopular Cersei. So it's going to be a great, and we're going to have a stream separately to talk about the Fagon-Dany interaction. I've been thinking about that a lot lately and how that's going to go. But the point is, Hallstein is in King's Landing, and if it travels, it's going to stay within the scope of the Cersei-Fagon war. And so when Fagon wins that war, very good chance Hallstein will be in the possession of Team Fagon. And when we get to the end of this, I will tell you where all the swords are and under who, like which power controls which swords. So don't worry about trying to remember it all. I'll sum it up. Next up is another sword. This is not confirmed, but Blackfire is almost certainly in one of the chests that Illyrio has sent to Fagon, which means that Fagon will be pulling it out when he pulls out, when he washes the dye out of his hair and declares himself to be a real Targaryen. He's probably going to have Blackfire. Of course, it is associated with the Blackfires who are rebels. However, before that, it was the Targaryen ancestral sword. It's also just a plain old badass weapon. So here you go. This is Mike Hallstein. That's Daemon Blackfire with Blackfire. Great piece of artwork. Mike Hallstein. We're going to do a lot of Mike Hallstein today. He does a great job with the Valyrian steel, so I'm using a lot of his. This is Fagon with Blackfire, and this is by Ellen Fan. That's the artist, Ellen Fan. Elinfan. And then one more with Fagon. This is Fagon in armor. It's a giant picture with Blackfire. And you can see Blackfire is one of those great swords, I believe. It's going to be like 5.5 feet tall. It's huge. So very cool there. Blackfire, come on down. He's on the board. And actually, I'm going to go grab my Screaming Cockatoo right now. And so I will put the Fagon art back up, and you can look at it. So there you go. There's the Daemon and his descendant Fagon. It's a nice little family picture of Civil War. Yay. So everybody, let's get the camera here. I'm about to show you. This is a wet. This is what it looks like when a cockatoo gets wet. They look pretty ridiculous. She's not even as wet as she was. We took a shower today. Cleo loves taking showers, and she still wanted to come out and party. Why don't you just dry off in the room, girl? No, you got to take part. Okay, here we go. Cleo's taking part, everyone. All right. And as always, thanks for bearing with me. I do have pets. They are awake during the day. I can't completely ignore them, so I appreciate that. I know it's not as entertaining watching on the rewatch, but keep it moving as best I can. So Blackfire's on the board. Again, that's not confirmed. That's a probably. So, just keep that. Take it for what it is. I'd be shocked if it wasn't there, though. Next up, we have 2 Ironborn swords. First of which is Red Rain. Red Rain belongs to Dagon Drum of House Drum. And let me pull up my notes here. So Dagon Drum is on Oakenshield currently, or he may have moved on. He may be with Euron's fleet. He is the Lord of Old Wick. He ran for king, if you will. He threw his name in the hat at the King's Moot. Dunstan of House Drum. Let me put the sigil up there. He's called the Bone Hand. There's an ancient member of Drum called Dagon Drum, the Necromancer. And their sigil is the bone hand on red. There's cool symbolism behind that. We won't really get into too much of that right now, but Dagon Drum is called the bone hand. Point is, he is not a solid Euron ally. He tried to be king first and then eventually went with Euron. He was also somebody that Euron tried to... No, I'm sorry. That's something... forget that last sentence. I'm talking about somebody else. Yeah, so he ran at the Moot. So he potentially is not super loyal to Euron, but right now he's with Euron's forces. They've moved on. Like I said, he's either in Oakenshield. That's the last place he was seen in the books, but he's more likely he's with Euron's fleet somewhere near the Arbor getting ready to attack Old Town. And then next up is similar deal, Nightfall. Nightfall is in the possession of Harris Harlaw of House Harlaw. Nope, obviously there's no art of Dunstan Drum or Harris Harlaw. I would have used it, but they're minor characters. So House Harlaw is there. Harris has been named Lord of Greyshield. He was one of Victarion's allies that Euron sort of bought off by giving him a shield island, if you remember that scene. So he's the Lord of Greyshield. Now, Harris Harlaw supported Asha at the King's Moot. And he was also Victarion's ally after that. So he similarly is not a solid Euron ally. And I mention this because it's interesting that these 2 people that have the Valyrian steel swords under Euron don't love Euron. So potentially they could defect if later as the story goes on and there's if Theon and Asha come to oppose Euron's claim on the Iron Islands, perhaps they could flip back. And yes, most of the sigils are quite morbid. That's true. Especially the Ironborn. Everything's grim with the Ironborn. So there we go. That's Red Rain and Nightfall. The main thing to think about is that if they're in Euron's possession, meaning if they're in the possession of allies under Euron, Euron's story does seem to be heading eventually to the final battle. He is somebody that may well have a hand in bringing on the Long Night or trying to use the power of the others, as I have said in the Night's King Crow's Eye video and Euron King of the Apocalypse. At the very least, we know that Dany and her forces are probably going to interact with Euron because she's probably going to be taking the Ironborn ships back to Westeros. So if there's at some point, Dany and Jon may oppose and fight Euron. And so there's an opportunity to collect those swords, essentially, is what I'm saying. The swords are in the hands of allies of Euron. Euron is headed for conflict with Dany and or Jon and or the White Walkers. So even though Harris Harlaw and Dunstan Drum are minor characters, there are paths for those swords to make it to the last battle. No. Asking if Dawn is just a glamour to boost the Danes' standing. No, it is not. The Maesters have examined it, and they are the ones writing the World of Ice and Fire, and they say, those who have examined it say it's exactly like Valyrian steel. It's sharp, unbreakable, super light, but it glows pale as milk glass. It's not, they don't say the word glow, but it's alive with light, pale as milk glass. So it really is just like white Valyrian steel. There may be a glow to it. It may be just sort of opalescent or luminescent in a sense. So yeah, it's not a glamour though. Too many people have seen it. Strong Belwest predictions. I didn't also, when we get to the characters who might be involved in the Long Night, we can talk about Belwest. I've got a section for Dany's allies that could make it all the way up to the wall. Belwest kind of makes sense. He's a durable fella. He ate all those poison locusts and still didn't die. So he'd be a good red shirt to go on the mission. Thank you, Alex Mars. And thank you, Keaton, for a PayPal. It was, you don't have to mention this on the stream PayPal, but thank you. So next up, that covers the 2 Ironborn swords. Next up, we have Lady Forlorn, which is, it's up in the Vale. We got to scroll north. Lady Forlorn, of course, possessed by Lyn Corbray. And there's a picture of Lyn Corbray with the Lady Forlorn. Of course, he has a great sigil, 3 ravens clutching hearts. So it's kind of like a blood raven. It's a symbol that sends the same message as blood raven. It is literally ravens gripping bloody hearts. So perhaps that's something from the author to indicate that Lyn Corbray perhaps will be involved in the Long Night fight. Perhaps. He does have a Valyrian steel sword after all. So it's called Heart Eater. I'm sorry, Lady Forlorn. Not Heart Eater. What am I saying? Heart Eater is Joffrey's sword, not Valyrian steel. So Lady Forlorn, it's with Lyn Corbray in the Vale. Now, the interesting thing here is that Lyn Corbray, he's Peter Baelish's fake enemy / ally / possibly real enemy. We don't know. Sansa's not sure. But ostensibly, he's working with Peter, pretending to oppose him so that they can manipulate the High Lords of the Vale. But what this means is that the sword essentially is, Lyn is tagging along with Peter Baelish. So whenever Peter Baelish and Sansa's storyline sort of climaxes, we do expect Sansa and possibly the army of the Vale to go north. They might not ride in to save the day at the Battle of Winterfell like they did on the show, but the Vale army is very conspicuously unbloodied. So it could make for an army that gets involved in the north towards the end of the story. So very easy to see how Lyn Corbray and his sword will eventually come into the Winterfell / Long Night storyline. And it just so happens that Peter Baelish has a second Valyrian steel weapon in his possession, which is, of course, the Cat's Paw Blade. That's right, he still has that thing. Now, much more was made of the Cat's Paw Blade on the show. They'd made obviously we know, let's see. So first it was used to try to kill Lady Cat. Seems that Joffrey sent the assassin to kill Lady Cat. So if what I was thinking is, what if Sansa uses the Cat's Paw Blade to kill Peter Baelish when the time comes? she's definitely going to have a hand in Peter Baelish's downfall. It could be a political thing, but who knows? Maybe she'll actually kill him with that knife. It would be kind of poetic justice, since Baelish was basically brought down the Starks and Tullys using that knife in part with his deception with Tyrion and the lies he told about it. And then the knife was used and almost to try to kill Bran and almost killed Catelyn. So this knife has a lot to do with Peter Baelish's taking down the Starks. So if Sansa used it to take down Peter Baelish, that is just would be perfect. And yes, Genty, I do have Patreon submissions as well. A lot of the Patreon comments were about the battles, which I'm saving for a future stream, of course. But I did put some of them in the notes about the various topics when it was appropriate. Genty, if you if you have a specific comment that I'm missing, then go ahead and just throw it in now. But I think I got everything. So the cat's paw dagger, like I said, it was used more on the show, wasn't it? First we had Bran, looking menacingly with it, giving it to Arya. And Arya, of course, jumped off a trampoline and stabbed the Night King with the knife. So there was that. But that aside, it does seem possible that the cat's paw blade could be a valuable weapon. And in fact, it could be a valuable weapon in the hands of Arya. If Sansa has it, she could easily give it to Arya. And or it could be really anybody could use it. It's just super handy. It's a Valyrian steel weapon. So, there you go. Yes, Bran is psychic. That's how we knew there'd be a trampoline in the Godswood. He's a green seer. He can see the future, guys. He's on top of this stuff. So next up is going to be the Celtigar axe. Yes, this is one of the coolest things around. We haven't seen it, of course, but there is a Valyrian steel axe on Claw Isle. And if you notice on the map, I'm putting the weapons right above the place where they are. So if you look under the axe handle, you see Claw Isle. You look under Widow's Wail and you see King's Landing. Under Blackfire's Storm's End, et cetera, et cetera. So Celtigar axe. We haven't seen it, but we've heard about it. Now, the current Lord of Celtigar is sorry, I'm bouncing around in my notes. Yes, so the living Celtigar is Ardrian. He's an old man, and we've never seen him. He didn't even come to Dragonstone. I think some other Celtigar came. So he's very old, and not sure. So let's think about this. How could the axe come into play? I've actually got some art for the axe. So first of all, here's the Celtigar sigil. Cool thing about Celtigar is it is a Valyrian house. There's 3 houses in Westeros with blood of old Valyria. Obviously Targaryen, Valerion, but Celtigar also is the blood of old Valyria. So they have a Valyrian steel axe. Kind of makes sense. Now, one of the bad ideas that somebody had, I forget who, but one of Stannis' allies was like, yeah, let's go. After they lost the battle for King's Landing, they were like, yeah, let's go raid Claw Isle because Celtigar didn't help us enough. And Stannis is like, that's cowardly. We're not doing that. So it's still sitting there. And yeah, shout out to the cancers in the stream. Click your crabbies there. Andata C. So how could the axe come into play? Well, potentially, obviously, Dany's coming back to Dragonstone. Probably Fagon's going to take up shop in King's Landing. So the Celtigars, somebody could just show up to King's Landing to swear fealty to one of these new kings. Maybe George will introduce the son of Old Man Celtigar, and he'll show up in King's Landing to swear fealty to either Fagon or Dany with the axe. Or perhaps he'll show up to Dragonstone when Daenerys lands on Dragonstone and throws up her banners there. But the point is, Claw Isle is very close to Dragonstone, and Driftmark. So it's not far. We just need a reason to stop by and grab it, essentially. So certainly not impossible. And I also I got some art of, this is Victorian. So I just wanted a big axe artwork. So here's Victorian, the Iron Reaver. He uses a battle axe. Obviously, Celtigar's going to have different armor. They're not going to have squids on it. They'll probably have, crabs on their armor. But eventually, if we see it in play, you're going to see some big Celtigar warrior with a big axe, and it'll be hella cool. So come on, George, give it to us. Celtigar axe on the board. I guess I could have been booping these. Sorry, lack of boops. And let me just check on my dock here. Cool, just that Brightroar one we're saving. Very good, very good. Sip of tea. Hey, Cleo, how you doing, girl? Well, that's good to hear. Yeah, I'll start booping. We've got a lot of pictures to put up on the board left still. So, Celtigar axe. Next up is, of course, we're going to have to go north for this. Those are all the weapons in the south. But up north, of course, there's a Valyrian steel sword called Longclaw. We all know Longclaw. It's wielded by that hunky man, Jon Snow. Yes. Fadli Ramdani is the artist on this one. And Fadli Ramdani is kind of king of the lusty, aged up Jon Snow artwork. So yes, this is obviously like Jon Snow, Lord of Winterfell, age 30, who didn't get whited. But that's allowable. So there's Jon Snow. It also killer Longclaw picture here. That's really why I used it. It's just a nasty looking hunk of steel there. Beautiful, beautiful Longclaw. And then there's also this one, which I use regularly. This is from Boyan Petrov, slightly Russian or Slavic looking Jon Snow accordingly. But of course, a sick fire hand. Jon had his hand burned when he killed the whites. This is giving him more of like a Victorian style fire hand. So who knows? Maybe when Jon holds a flaming sword, we'll see something more like that. Maybe his, one thing I've wondered about Victorian, we're going to talk about Vic later, but what's the point of George putting that fire hand thing in the story? It could just be precedent. It could be that Victorian is literally going to end up fighting the others with his fire hand, choke strangling whites and stuff. But it could be that it's more of a thing for George to show you that it can be done. So it could be that fire whites will automatically have hands that can hold flaming swords. But what if that sort of thing that Moqorro did to Victorian, what if that's something that Melisandre will do to people so that they can hold flaming swords? Because basically, it seems like Moqorro could do that to anybody, right? I mean, it doesn't make sense to suppose that Victorian's hand had to be infected first in order for Moqorro to transform it into a charcoal hand. He used the charcoal hand magic to heal the hand. But if you can turn someone's hand into charcoal, you can turn someone's hand into charcoal. So this could be a thing. And Jon's burning hand could foreshadow that. Of course, the soldiers of Valour are called the Fiery Hand. So this could be a lost R'hllorist thing to have those fire hands, as I've talked about in the Melisandre's Secrets videos. So that's Longclaw. Jon dreams, of course, of wielding a burning red sword in his Azor Ahai dream. It said his blade burned red in his fist, and then a paragraph later, it's named as Longclaw. So it's Jon's dream. Of course, he's going to be holding Longclaw. That's his sword in his dream. That doesn't mean that Longclaw is the one he will use against the others, but it might. It certainly might. So perhaps Jon will wield Longclaw, a flaming Longclaw against the others. Perhaps, Longclaw was, of course, originally the sword of House Mormont. So it's also very possible that Jon or Dany could pass it back to Jorah if Jorah takes the black. That was his father, Lord Commander Mormont, his dying wish to Sam, tell Jorah to take the black. So if Jorah does come back to Westeros with Dany and take the black, makes a lot of sense for Jon to give the Mormont sword back to Jorah, especially if he's going to wield Dawn or Oathkeeper, because again, Oathkeeper is his father's sword. And very frequently, when Jon holds Longclaw and thinks about how Mormont gave it to him, he thinks about how the sword he always dreamed about holding was ice. It's mentioned like 3 times that when Jon was a kid, he dreamed of wielding ice. And when he almost kills Ygritte, when he's commanded to execute Ygritte but doesn't, he's holding Longclaw, but again, thinks of ice. So I do think there's foreshadowing that Jon could wield ice, which would mean Oathkeeper. But that's it. It's either going to be Oathkeeper, Longclaw, or Dawn for Jon. There's 3 choices there. Actually, there's one more choice that I'll mention later. Actually, I'll mention it sooner because it's next. If we go up north, there's one more sword. It's Dark Sister, and it's in Bloodraven's cave. Probably. What we know is that George has confirmed that Bloodraven had it with him when he disappeared, which means it's probably in the cave, almost certainly. What's the point of saying that otherwise, right? So let me put... So yes, Bloodraven, like I said, when he disappeared up north, he had it with him. So this is a picture of Bloodraven. Last scene, this is the milk carton picture for Bloodraven right here. Last scene with Dark Sister and a set of arrows. That's it. Where'd he go? He was lured into a cave by the children of the forest, and he never came back. So there's Bloodraven. And thing about Dark Sister, it's carried by Bloodraven, and Bloodraven's missing an eye. But the last time Dark Sister was used in battle, or one of the most notable times it was used in battle, was, of course, in the battle over the God's Eye between Daemon Targaryen and Aemond One-Eye. And very famously, Daemon Targaryen leapt from the back of one dragon to the other like James Bond, and he took Dark Sister and he jammed it into that star sapphire eye of King Aemond. And Aemond, chained to the saddle of Vhagar, was found at the bottom of the lake, the God's Eye. Dark Sister plunged hilt deep into his eye socket, just as Sam Hogg has depicted here. So on the left is Mike Hallstein, again, and on the right is the artist is Sam Hogg. And so, yes, there was apparently a diving team. You guys, this is the fan fiction I want. Vhagar's skull and Dark Sister were recovered from the bottom of the God's Eye. So that means some MFers went there out in a little canoe and dove down to the bottom of the lake and recovered, again, the dragon skull and the sword. And yes, hilt deep. Insert your jokes. Absolutely. Insert. So there you go. I don't know if Westeros hired some squishers. Maybe they got some crabs from Crackclaw Point. Dive down there in the water. Recover the Dark Sister for you. That'll be 30,000 dragons, my lord. That's how it happened. I could pretty much write this fan fiction right now. See, it were Dick Crabbe's great grandfather. It were, yes, it were. Okay, enough of that. So there's Dark Sister. It's up on the map. Boop, 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 boop. There, we're caught up. Now, just one or two other things. Kago Corpse Killer is a member of, is it the Windblown? Yes. He is second in command of the Windblown. He's huge, scarred, and angry. He is called Corpse Killer because he slew the dressed-up corpse of the Butcher King Cleon of Astapor. They dug his corpse up, put it in armor, and sent it out on a horse. Kago slew it with his Valyrian steel Arak. He also was involved with Pretty Maris and the Tattered Prince in Quentin's plan to steal the dragons. He killed a guard and then called for the chains to bind the dragons in that scene. He was wearing a cobra mask. Why am I telling you all this? Well, there's a reason. So first of all, there's no picture of Kago, but I used these two pictures of Drogo so we could see an Arak. So picture of Valyrian steel Arak. That's going to be a nasty weapon for sure. So the clues. First of all, he's a corpse killer. So if somehow he ends up on Team Dany headed back to Westeros, it could make sense for his Arak or even Kago himself to be involved with fighting the others. His name is Corpse Killer. Okay. He also was trying to steal a dragon. So just the fact that he's involved with dragons, I need to reread that scene, but there could be a clue there. He's wearing a cobra mask as well. So that's a serpent sort of dragon affiliation. He wants to steal dragon power. He's wearing a cobra mask. These could be nothing, but they could be soft clues about him becoming a Firewhite, joining the Last Watch. In any case, he's got the Valyrian steel Arak, so it could be just a weapon that's important. Maybe, it'll just come into Dany's possession. For example, we don't know, like the Windblown are kind of working with Barristan currently, but they're very much their own agents. So he could end up on Team Dany or he could end up killed by Dany. But one way or the other, it's possible that Arak could be in Dany's possession when she comes back to Westeros. So there is a path for it to be involved in the action. Next up is Euron's armor. And thanks to somebody for suggesting this. Who is it? I've got a number of people that suggested things on Twitter. I'm just going to read all the names. I think it was one of these people. Red Eye of Starfall at Raven Mormont. A Song of Brown and Orange at Sir Pounce the Third. Liam B at CAW Mythologist. Zap Truly at Pratt Zuli. Angela Solon at factually_Angie, all with suggestions about the swords. So I think one of those reminded me about Euron's armor. So we put Euron's armor on the map because that would be useful against the others. Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? Yes, in fact, it would look good on Jon Snow. That's the bottom line. Because Jon has that dream where he's armored in black ice, but his blade burned red in his fist. Thing about black ice is that could be a reference to Valyrian steel armor because Jon's father's sword is called ice and it's black, or at least it's so dark gray that it looks black, which is why Ned's ancestor is called Barth Blacksword because he carried ice. So ice is a black sword and it's called ice. Therefore, describing Jon as having black ice armor could be a sneaky way for George to foreshadow Jon getting Valyrian steel armor. He's probably going to have to take it from Euron's corpse, but that is a thing that could happen. If we get a reenactment of the Daemon Aemond God's Eye fight, the dragon fight, seems like it would be Jon and Euron potentially, with Jon in the Daemon role. So I could see that armor coming into Jon's possession. But whoever wears it, it's a valuable piece in the fight against the others. So, a great random question from Weirwood Serpent: is it possible Dany will find Valyrian steel when she burns Volantis, which she is going to do? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. There's a few ways that Valyrian weapons that we haven't heard of could appear. And there are some lost ones that could reappear as well, which we're about to talk about. For example, there is the question of Brightroar, as got a super chat about that earlier. And let's read it now. The Spargmeister, I'm placing my bet that Euron has the Lannister blade Brightroar, perhaps that Jaerion Lannister is one of the tongueless dudes hanging around with Euron just for kicks. Well, that's dark. I didn't think about the last part. Jaerion Lannister, he went to Valyria to try to recover Brightroar. Brightroar was lost by King Tommen II, King of the Rock. So this is pre-conquest, but post-Doom. King Tommen II went to Valyria to try to recover some stuff, see what was there, etc., and he never appeared again. So it's either gone forever or Euron has it. And I actually did a Twitter poll question about that one. I asked, let me put this up on the screen here. In fact, I did got a couple of Twitter poll questions that I should have read already. So I did some poll questions yesterday on Twitter. If you are on Twitter, follow me at the Dragon LML. I'm not encouraging anyone to actually join Twitter. I wouldn't do that. It's kind of a cesspool. But if you're there, follow me. I'll give you some of the good stuff. So first question, will Brightroar, the Valyrian sword of House Lannister, resurface? 46%, 47% said no. So about half. Of those who answered yes, Euron, 26%. Some other way, 19%. And with 7%, perhaps Dany visits Valyria. So here's my other idea. What if it's still in Valyria, Dany's going to sail by there? So it could be that George will have Dany make a detour to part of Valyria. I mean, there's all kinds of interesting things he could do with that. Because Dany is on a path of confronting her history, the legacy of the Mad King, her father, and the legacy of Valyrian slavery. She's already dealing with that in Slaver's Bay. So it's George was going to have her go to Asshai, and then he changed his mind. So having her stop by Valyria could make a lot of sense. So Dany could pull something out of Valyria, or even Volantis. Volantis also is a place where you could have Valyrian artifacts, as somebody suggested earlier. So those are the ideas for Brightroar. Either Euron has it, or maybe Dany will produce it. And real quick, let's just hit these other poll questions here. Next one up. Like I said, Georgia said Dawn is in Starfall. Will it come out to play? Only 11% think no. 60%, 59 said yes, Jon's going to wield it. 10% said Dany will use it in a magical way. And 20% said other, although nobody specified what they were thinking of other. So I did get someone suggesting that maybe Darkstar will actually use it, even though he's a bastard and an imposter. And I guess you can't rule that out. The idea of unsavory heroes being involved fighting the others, I mean, that does make sense. It is something George would do. So I asked, George has confirmed that Dark Sisters was with Bloodraven. Will it come out? 11% said no. 30% said yes. Mira will wield it. And of course, if it's in Bloodraven's cave, then it would make sense for Mira to wield it to help defend Bran from the Whites as they flee south. 33% said yes, Arya will wield it. And that could be both, obviously. Mira could wield it for a time until they get back to Winterfell. It was made for a woman's hand. So Arya is still kind of a child. It's hard to say how much bigger she'll be by the end of the story, but she could potentially use Dark Sister if George wants her to. Might be a little bit of a stretch, but he could have her use it. And then 24% said other. And the other would be Jon Snow, really. if you think about Fagon having Blackfire as a symbol of his claim, well, Jon has a claim to the throne too. And if Dark Sister is in Bloodraven's cave, then it could end up back at Winterfell or the Wall. So maybe Jon will come to inherit it as his Targaryen heritage. Jon also has a lot of echoes of Daemon Targaryen, who wielded Dark Sister. Jon is also very similar to Bloodraven, who wielded Dark Sister. And in fact, resurrected Jon could have white hair and red eyes, like his wolf ghost, but also like Bloodraven. So Jon wielding Dark Sister could make sense. So that is the fourth sword that Jon could wield: Longclaw, Dawn, Oathkeeper, or even Dark Sister. Next question. Will Jon give Longclaw back to Ser Jorah if Jorah honors his father wish to take the black? 55% said yes, so Jon can use Dawn. 33% said no, Longclaw's Jon's forever, and 11% said other. I'm not sure what other would be. I guess just unattached from the Dawn question, I guess would be the other. So then, this is some tinfoil I'm going to get into. I'm going to save this one. Which random Valyrian weapon do you think might make its way to the Wall somehow? Kago Corpse Killer's Arak, the Celtigar Axe, Lady Forlorn, or Red Rain or Nightfall. Put those last two together. And it's Lady Forlorn, 44%, Red Rain or Nightfall, 34%, and 10% each for Kago Corpse Killer's Arak and the Axe of House Celtigar. Very cool. Thank you, everyone who responded. And it is, in fact, 4:20. And I do, in fact, need a bong. So let me go ahead and entertain you while I'm gone with some artwork. Oh, yes. No, not share. File, share screen. Let's see what we got. Oh, yes. I think we've got some Brightroar artwork, don't we? So again, Brightroar was lost in Valyria. And this image is by Max Reese, and this is called The Gate. And so this is I think this is actually concept art for the show of Tyrion and Jorah sailing through Valyria, which is arguably not possible. We don't know. We just really don't know. People go, they sail into Valyria, they don't come back. So at some point, I guess, before the demons eat you, you are on a boat sailing past, ruins and things. So in any case, it's a beautiful piece of artwork. Very imaginative, very cool. And here is Brightroar. This is a really detailed Brightroar. It's by Nutchapol Fitinun Thakorn. I'm just going to have to put that up on the screen. I can't say it. It's a very complex Vietnamese or Thai name, and I'm just butchering it. But let me get... I want to share the artist's name because we always give artists credit here. I'll just look it up real quick. I think when you see the name, you'll have pity on me for not being able to say it. But let's see. Where is the chat? Where is the chat? Where'd it go? 17 windows up. Here we go. There is the name of the artist who did Brightroar. So 1 second. I'll be right back. All right, guys, thanks for bearing with me here. Who kept the dragon bone dagger? So that's the cat's paw dagger that I was talking about earlier, and that is in Peter Baelish's possession. And yes, like I said, I like the idea of Sansa using it to slice his neck right open and bleed that Peter Baelish blood all over his sticky red hands. Because if you remember that scene where he tries to feed Sansa the pomegranate seeds, which is, of course, a reference to Persephone. Persephone eats the pomegranate seeds while in Hades and thus, therefore, is bound to Hades. Sansa does not eat the pomegranate seeds that Baelish tries to give her, which foreshadows her not getting stuck and escaping the clutches of Peter Hades Baelish. Peter, however, eats the pomegranate seeds and gets his hands all red, and then he's like, but I hate the stickiness. So yes, I'd like to see Baelish's throat cut, the blood all over his sticky hands as he's dying. Can see it now. Give it to me. All right. So thank you for that. And I got a couple PayPals that came in. Shadow Demon. Could Bonero or the Temple of Valor bring extra unnamed Valyrian weapons into the mix if needed? Maybe wielded by the Fiery Hand. Yes, this is a great idea, actually. I'm going to talk about the Fiery Hand when we talk about all the people that could be involved with the battle against the others, which is looking like it's definitely going to be a second stream. I'm definitely going to shut this one down and start a new one for that so that we've got two different videos. I'll explain that in a second. But yes, we're going to talk about the Fiery Hand. And yes, like I said, there's multiple places that George could produce more Valyrian steel weapons. The Red Temple could certainly have some. I mean, they could have a bunch of them, to be honest. They could be hoarding them. That would make sense, right? They're all about the fight against the others in the Long Night. They believe in it. They're preparing for it. They're looking for the signs. They have prophecies about it. And essentially all of their magical technology seems geared towards fighting the others, as I talked about in the Melisandre secrets, from the fire whites to the fire hand stuff to lighting their swords on fire to Melisandre's transformation into a fire white. All of that seems geared to fight the others. So if the R'hllors have Valyrian steel, it makes sense. In fact, my whole speculation about this, and let me put myself on the screen here, is that the fire white magical technology or ability dates back to the Long Night, and that the whole purpose of it is to make people who can fight the others. A fire white should be impervious to the cold. They don't need to eat or sleep, and they can light their swords on fire. Flaming swords obviously will kill the whites because we know the whites are highly combustible. The problem is that fire, that's how you melt steels with fire. So flaming swords don't last long. They break. Thoros' blades broke. Barrack's blade broke against the Hound. So it really does have to be a Valyrian steel weapon to be an effective flaming sword. So if the Red Temple has the ancient secret of making fire whites that can make flaming swords, it would be little good if they didn't also have Valyrian steel weapons. So it could be that the Valyrian steel weapons were there during the Long Night. The Red Temple now only has a remnant of the tradition. They don't have the weapons anymore. But it would almost make more sense if they did have some Valyrian steel weapons. So I like this idea a lot. Thank you for suggesting it. Downtown Clanny Brown says, do you think we might get an appearance of long-lost swords like Lamentation or Orphan Maker? Beautiful. It's right where I was going next. So let's go back to my presentation and talk about the lost swords. There's 5 of them. And there's 1 or 2 that could resurface. Obviously, we mentioned Brightroar already. There we go. So Brightroar could reappear. We just talked about that. The next lost sword is Lamentation, and I've put it in a little shadow here. Boop. There's a shadow boop. Boop. It was lost in King's Landing. It was lost specifically during the storming of the Dragon Pit. It belonged to House Royce, which is interesting because Royce has, of course, the runic armor. And the runic armor, it's bronze armor. And the King of Winter Crown is made of bronze and iron, quote unquote, metals that are dark and strong to fight the cold. Bronze actually there is a real property of bronze that it can withstand cold almost better than any metal without getting brittle. So bronze weapons could have been something the first men used against, say, the whites. I don't think it would kill another, but if you're chopping whites, I guess maybe it would last a little longer. The more important thing is the runic armor. Rune magic is a very old kind of magic in all kinds of folklore, specifically Norse and European folklore. George does seem to be using it a bit. So we've seen that the Valyrian steel armor that Euron has does have glyphs and runes on it as well. So the Royces, I guess what I'm saying is the Royces have little memories of stuff that might have to do with the Long Night. The idea of carving runes on your armor or wielding metal that can withstand the cold. So the fact that they also had a Valyrian steel sword is interesting. However, it was lost in the storming of the Dragon Pit, so it could basically be anywhere. We got no idea where that thing is. Some schmuck grabbed it and probably sold it. It could be lurking anywhere, literally anywhere, but there's no clues that it is somewhere. So it's just lost. Next up is Orphan Maker, the sword of bold John Roxton. Orphan Maker does see some cool action in Fire and Blood. John Roxton slew Hugh the Hammer, who was a dragon rider. So that's interesting. This is a sword that, used to slay a dragon rider, but he was a traitorous dragon rider. So that could be something about Night's King. All right. There's a few Dragon Slayer stories out there, and I think they're all important to look at. So you've got a guy with a Valyrian steel sword slaying a turncloak dragon lord, and Night's King in some ways is a turncloak dragon lord, according to my theories about him being Azor High. But it was last seen with Unwind Peak after the Dance of the Dragons. So it passed from John Roxton to Unwind Peak because John Roxton was killed in the war as well. Unwind Peak was seen with it in King's Landing shortly after. But Unwind Peak fell from power, and House Peak was basically eradicated by Bloodraven during one of those Blackfire rebellions. I think I've got that right. So we got no idea where Orphan Maker is. It could be around, but there's no clues about it. So it's probably just gone. But again, if George wants to, he can retcon a story about this. He put in a bunch of stuff in Fire and Blood about how cool the sword is and bold John Roxton and all this stuff. So he's given us a story about this sword, and he's told us where it disappeared, approximately, at least who had it last. So he could very easily give us the rest of that story in Fire and Blood or anywhere else where it turns up. And you can't count out Varys, too. Varys is preparing the way for Fagon. He's hiding away, possibly like Tyrek Lannister, who was lost in the King's Landing riots. A lot of people think Varys has him hidden away to be a Lannister heir that's pro-Fagon. So he could be laying aside all kinds of things. He might have, somebody might have Aegon's crown. So if Varys, these swords that were lost in melees, in the fights, the storming of the Dragon Pit, places like that, they're floating around on the black market, essentially. Hey, Molly, thanks for dropping by. I was just chatting with you this week. Yeah, they're floating around, and Varys is somebody like any of the swords that are on the black market, Varys could have found, bought, and be setting aside for Fagon. So there you go. Molly, of course, super old school patron. So got to give the shout out there. Let's see here. Vigilance was the sword of House Hightower. And where was it lost? It was lost at Tumbleton. Tumbleton, the scene of 2 horrific battles in Fire and Blood. It was last seen when Lord Ormond Hightower was killed by Roderick Dustin at Tumbleton. So maybe House Dustin has it, and they've never showed it to anyone ever. More likely it was lost in the fight, and then it's on the black market somewhere. But a Dustin could pull it out. That could also happen. Now, the most interesting one to me, well, first let me mention Sandok the Shadow. Sandok the Shadow had a Valyrian steel arak. It's described as a curved sword. It's basically an arak. And he was in service to House Rogaire from Lys. Now, House Rogaire, Lara Rogaire married Viserys I, and a bunch of Rogaires came to King's Landing. They came to court with her. Sandok the Shadow was one. He had a Valyrian steel arak. And then Morito Rogaire of Lys, who was the brother of Lara, he had a Valyrian steel sword called Truth. And I'll put that one up. So Truth and Sandok's arak, both under control of House Rogaire from Lys. Here's where it gets interesting. So I'm just going to read this quote. House Rogaire suffered a downfall at a certain point, and it says, when word of the fall of House Rogaire reached Goldtown, Morito, who was, again, Morito Rogaire of Lys is the brother of Lara, he was put in charge of a mission to put down a rebellion in the Vale. So when he hears of the fall of House Rogaire, Morito yielded up his command to someone else and sailed for Braavos. Once in Braavos, he treated with the key holders of the Iron Bank and received gold from them, which he used to hire ships and swords in Tyrosh, and then prepared to attack Lys in retaliation for what happened to his family. Archmaester Gildane does not go into the details of what happened. So this guy with a Valyrian steel sword hears about the downfall of his house. Then he leaves Westeros, goes to the Iron Bank of Braavos, and receives a ton of gold, which he uses to raise an army. How do you get enough gold to raise an army? Well, it could be that you sell them your Valyrian steel sword. Could be. And that would mean, folks, that Truth could be in Braavos under the control of the Iron Bank, who is very tightly connected to the House of Black and White, which means that this little girl, Arya Stark, could be sent back to Westeros with a Valyrian steel sword. Truth is too big for Arya to wield. However, if it needs to make its way back into the fray, it could go with Arya. She could steal it, or it could be sent with her. We don't know if she's going to leave Braavos on good terms with the Faceless Men or not. It's entirely up in the air. However, this detail that this dude, Rogaire, went to Braavos and came out with a whole bunch of gold and an army, it could be a clue that he sold them a Valyrian steel sword. And if George is laying clues about that, the only reason for that would be that it's going to pop back up again. So think about this. Think about the concept of truth and how much it has to do with Arya's arc. She plays the lying game and learns how to lie. And she hides the truth of her identity down deep so she can become nobody. But she still is Arya. And the thing is, the sword of truth, that's a biblical reference. And it's a really interesting concept. There's this whole thing about the armor of the Holy Spirit, essentially, and the breastplate of salvation, cloak of righteousness, I think, something like that. The sword of truth. Now, the idea of associating truth with a sword is a very old concept because truth does cut like a sword. It cuts through bullshit. It cuts through lies. The truth can be very harsh. It really can cut you because everyone has their self-deceptions. And when the truth hits you, sometimes it feels like you've been cut. So that is why people analogize truth with the concept of truth with a sword. So Braavos, I mean, Arya having so much about deception, lies, and truth in her plot, it just seems like it could be a poetic thing if she literally gets her hands on the sword of truth. George Martin was raised Catholic, and he puts biblical references all over the story. All over the story. I should really do some streams about that one time. But that would be a cool reference if Arya literally has the sword of truth and returns to Westeros, the master of the lying game. I think it'd be rich. So it's still far-fetched. I don't think it's likely, but it could be a thing that's happening. So I thought I'd give you that little tinfoil theory there. Hey. All right, so let me zoom out a bit. So we can see the whole thing, or most of it. Dark Sister and Longclaw up here. And there's everything else down there. So that gives you an idea of where all the swords are. So, who controls the steel? At the end of the day, Team Fagon could control as many as 5 weapons. Okay? They probably have Blackfire, Widow's Wail, and let me go ahead and just do this. I'll move them to where they are going to be. So Blackfire, where's Blackfire? Blackfire currently in Storm's End. It's going to end up in King's Landing too. I'll stick it I'll stick it here. So it's also going to be in King's Landing. Dawn is going to end up in King's Landing. Like I said, Darkstar is going to steal it. I'm Darkstar. I've stolen Dawn. Hey guys, I'd like to join the Kingsguard. I look a lot like Arthur Dane. What do you think? So now we've got these 4 weapons here. If the Celtigar axe is going to do anything, it could also end up in King's Landing. Like I said, a member of House Celtigar could come to pledge allegiance to either Fagon or Dany. So your Celtigar axe, if it's going to come anywhere, it would come to King's Landing too. So you've got all these weapons, and let me get rid of my shadow ones because they're muddying up the picture. They're probably not going to come out. I'll leave Brightroar up there. So you can see Fagon may possess as many as 5 Valyrian steel weapons when Dany shows up. So kind of seems like George might be having Fagon gather Valyrian steel to give to Dany so that Dany can send all this north to fight the others. It kind of makes sense, right? Again, we don't know if this is even a thing. We don't know if George wants to get 12 Valyrian steel weapons up to the wall so that every member of a Jon Snow Last Hero, Night's Watch mission can all have Valyrian steel weapons. That's obviously what I'm hinting at. There is more than 12. There's like 13 of them. And if Brightroar turns up, I think that's 14. So there's definitely enough without things like Truth or Lamentation or new weapons popping up. But new weapons could also pop up, as we've discussed. Maybe the Celtigar axe never comes out, but the R'hllorys bring a sword, or Euron produces a different sword. That's another one I didn't mention. If Euron's got a Valyrian steel suit of armor, he could have any old Valyrian steel sword, let alone Brightroar, right? So Team Phagon could have as many as 5 swords in King's Landing. Team Euron definitely controls Red Rain and Nightfall. They could also have Brightroar or some other rando Valyrian sword that Euron pulls out. And they've also got Euron's armor. So you can see all that down in the left corner, right? That's Team Euron. Peter Baelish has Lady Forlorn, Lynn Corbray under Peter Baelish, and the Cat's Paw. So that's 2 that are in the Vale. And of course, Sansa and Baelish, their arc is going to ultimately intersect with Winterfell. So those weapons have an easy road to get involved with the last battle. At the Wall, there is obviously Dark Sister and Longclaw. So Dark Sister is going to come back with Bran and Mira to the Wall or to Winterfell. Longclaw is with Jon. So those swords are both ready to go. So it's starting to look pretty likely that George is, in fact, positioning these weapons to be taking part in the last battle. Celtigar Axe is one thing, but the rest of these are all on track. They're being consolidated in the hands of Euron, Phagon, Peter Baelish, and they're up at the Wall. And then, of course, Oathkeeper is a free agent, but we expect Brienne to be involved going north to Winterfell or the Wall based on Jaime's dream and based on Oathkeeper, like we talked about, it being a Stark sword and being a red sword. And then even Kago's Arak, that's probably, or at least not probably, it definitely could come to Westeros with Dany, whether or not the Windblown are Dany's allies. It could come. So lots of Valyrian steel weapons, definitely at least 13. And most of them seem to be on a path to come into the hands of characters who are going to fight the others. And that is what I wanted to show you today. Pretty cool, right? Let me flip over to my Nimble Doc to see if I have missed any super chats here. Looks like we're up to date. Very good. Thank you, everyone. And over to PayPal. I am up to date there. So we're good. So I've got a couple more things I wanted to mention, which is, let's see. Let's do this. Yeah. Okay. So Odeco on, I believe this was Twitter, but it could have been Facebook. You've said before, you have to have 2 magic swords for a good sword fight to support the existence of a dark equivalent to Dawn. And guys, my idea here is that Lightbringer was actually a reference to 2 swords. The white sword, Dawn, and a black sword that would have been made by the Bloodstone Emperor's black meteorite. So you have a black meteor sword and a white meteor sword. Azor Ahai and the Bloodstone Emperor, closely connected, could be the same person. So Azor Ahai's Lightbringer, potentially it could be made from Bloodstone Emperor's black meteorite. I've always believed that, in fact. From the beginning, I've backed away from it, from being totally certain about it, but I do think it's more likely than not that Azor Ahai's weapon was a black sword, and it was basically the first Valyrian steel sword, a sword made with blood sacrifice. So is it out there? That's a different question. There's really only 2 possibilities. If it's a sword that we've seen before, there's only 2 possibilities. I think the Targaryen ancestral sword Blackfire is the most likely, because they took that with them from Valyria directly. So that one, and also it's named after, the name Blackfire is a reference to the black fire of the dragons, the black dragons being the most badass dragons, right? Drogon and Balerion, the Black Dread. The thing about Blackfire is it really expresses the concept of the dark sun, the dark sun king, a sun king that turns dark, the dark star concept, Lion of Night. These are all concepts that are attached with Azor Ahai as the villain who causes the long night. He's a solar king who hides the sun. So he is the dark star. He is the Lion of Night, the dark sun. So the idea of him wielding a black sword with black fire, it just makes a lot of sense. So if the sword, and also Elric's sword Stormbringer, which is a big influence of Lightbringer, it was a black blade that had black flames. So Lightbringer should be a black sword with black flames, or at least it could be. And black fire could be the one. If it's not black fire, then really ice is the only other possibility. Ice is the most important sword emotionally for the reader because it's Ned's sword. Okay. And it's just doing all this archetypal stuff. It gets split in half and turned red. So it reminds you of the last hero's sword, which was broken, and it reminds you of Lightbringer, the red sword. So we are told that the Starks, that ice, the Valyrian steel ice, is 400 years old from Valyria, which implies that, like all the other Valyrian steel in Westeros, it was purchased by a Westerosi noble, probably from the Targaryens on Dragonstone. Perhaps from Valyria itself, but more likely from the Targaryens. They essentially, Dragonstone is a trading outpost. It was established to trade with Westeros. So it's likely that the Valyrian steel trade flowed through Dragonstone before the Doom. Dragonstone was established about 200 years before the Doom. So that's the official story on ice. It's 400 years old. It's from Valyria. The Starks bought it when everybody was buying Valyrian steel swords, and that was all the rage. But maybe, just maybe, somehow Lightbringer has been in Valyria this whole time, and it got given to the Starks. Or maybe Lightbringer's been in the crypts the whole time, and the story about them buying ice is cover story, and then they just took it out of the crypts when everyone started carrying around Valyrian steel, and they had cover. This is all tinfoil, by the way. It's more likely if there's a black Azor Ahai Lightbringer that we haven't even seen it yet. In that case, Euron probably would produce it. Or maybe Dany would find it in Valyria. Something fucking epic as hell like that. That's how you'd introduce the Dark Lightbringer. Dany going to Valyria. Euron pulling it out when the long night falls. Something ridiculous, okay? So the sword Nightfall, I think, is just symbolism. There's nothing remarkable about the backstory of that sword that suggests that it is Lightbringer. However, the symbolism is important because it has a moonstone pommel, and it's called Nightfall. So it's kind of telling you the whole story of the long night. The moon was broken by a comet that looked like a dragon or a sword. And then the moon became a bunch of stones, moon meteors, which also looked like dragons and swords. These moon meteors caused the fall of the long night. So we have a black dragon sword called Nightfall with a moonstone pommel. It's like the whole story in a sword. So it's great symbolism, but I don't know if Nightfall is actually the thing. Yeah, I guess it could be in the Stark crypts. Yes, that is another epic reveal type of thing that would be worthy of the other original Lightbringer. It could be in the crypts. It could be somewhere in the north. If Azor Ahai possessed it and turned into the Night King, maybe it's in the heart of winter. Maybe it's at the Night Fort. So yeah, something like that. That's, yeah, Nightbringer. That was the whole point of titling that series Nightbringer, was that Lightbringer is tied to the long night. So yes, you got it. That's it. The other cool tinfoil I have is that ice could be reforged. I forget whose idea this is, but Gendry knows how to reforge Valyrian steel, maybe, because he apprenticed under Tobo Mott. And we know that Tobo Mott did know how to rework Valyrian steel. He's the one who split ice and made Widow's Wail and Oathkeeper. So it's very easy. If George wants, Gendry could have learned that. And if he did learn that, the main reason to rework Valyrian steel would be to reforge ice. I suppose you could have all the maesters throw in their links and we could melt them down and make like a blade or two. But more likely the idea of Gendry learning how to reforge Valyrian steel or rework it would be to reforge ice. Now, that's true. Minty makes the point. It's better to have actually 2 swords than one giant one. That is true. It is strategically better. However, there's a symbolic resonance perhaps with reforging ice. There's a line about broken swords can still kill, broken swords can be reforged, talking about the wildling force as a sword. But it's given at the wall. It sounds a lot like a reference to Lord of the Rings, where Isildur cuts the one ring from Sauron with the broken sword Narsil. That sword is later reforged for Aragorn, and it gets a new name, which I forget. So there's a lot of broken sword reforging stuff in Lord of the Rings and other fantasy that George could be going for. But yes, ice is ridiculous. It is super big. Like the only one that could wield ice would be like Hodor, warged by Bran, or some Umber, or something like that. Anduril, thank you. That's Aragorn's sword. So it's a long shot that ice would be reforged. Oh, that's a good idea, Minty. Yeah, maybe after everything, they reforge it after the battle's over to return the ancestral sword ice to House Stark. Yeah, that could make sense. That would be a nice poetic coda. Oh, the Hound. That's a good idea. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. The Hound is definitely, he's about 6'6". He's big enough to wield that sucker, and he very well could end up as the sworn sword of Sansa. He has a kind of fondness for Sansa and Arya both, so he could definitely end up fighting, and we're going to talk about that in the Warriors of the Long Night stream. Yeah, that would make sense if ice was reforged. Sandor could wield it. All the Hellhound symbolism of Sandor is like a mirror image to the Stark's direwolf symbol. The direwolf is a Hellhound. It's all a reference to Cerberus again and Hades and stuff. So yeah, it could totally make sense that Sandor would wield ice on behalf of the Starks. Oh, and he hates fire, so he would like a sword made of ice. Oh, and check this out. When Sandor fights against Beric, Beric's sword is a flaming sword, but twice in the battle, it describes Sandor's sword as the cold one. The flaming sword leapt up to meet the cold one. So that could also be foreshadowing of Sandor wielding ice, the cold sword. Oh, I like this. Now we're getting somewhere. Making the tinfoil together. Thanks, guys. And there's also the question of, yes, can dawn break? Like, because that's a whole saying, right? The break of dawn, blah, 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 blah. The long night is a breaking of the cycle of day, which is what dawn is. So, yeah, there's another tinfoil. Dawn could break and need to be reforged. So there you go. Last call for questions on this one. We're almost at 2 hours, folks. And I got to tell you, the Warriors part of this stream is longer than the Swords part. So I'm changing my plans on the fly here. We're going to have to do this a different day, the Warriors one. I'm not going to be able to shut this down and then do a whole nother 2-hour stream. So my voice is starting to get tired. And actually, Quinn is coming over to hang out tonight. So I do not have another 2 hours of live stream. And this might be like a 3-hour live stream, the Warriors one. Just to tease it, I will show you the presentation that I have ready. And we can do this on, should we do it on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday? Let me think about this for a second. And I'll tease you with the presentation. And I'll give you an idea of what we're going to do there. I had a feeling this was going to be too much fun and that we were going to get way into it. So, okay, so here is the Long Night's Watch presentation. And you can see there's a bunch of gray squares down here, but I will just show you what we're going to be doing. There's John. There's Danny. There's some brothers of the Night's Watch. And there's there's Melisandre. And there's Val. And every time we go through a character, of course, I'll have artwork. So there's Val. And here's Val and Melisandre. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through I've got 30 people here that could be involved in the battle against the others. I've got Sandor, I've got Marwyn the Mage, and the Blackfish, and Mance Rayder, and Arya, and friggin' Hyle Hunt. I've got all kinds of people. And I've got notes on every character. Notes about how they could be involved with Jon's mission north or with fighting against the others in some other place or way. Because, of course, we're going to fight the others in lots of places. And while Jon has taken this mission north that I think he's going to take, into the heart of winter, it's a Mordor situation. It's George's version of Frodo and Sam going behind enemy lines to melt down the ring while Aragorn and everyone else fight the army of Mordor at the gates of Mordor. It's the same scenario. People are going to be fighting the others at Winterfell and the Wall, the Trident maybe, and Jon and Dany and a crew of 12 are going behind enemy lines to do some magical quest that's going to, have to do with the Weirwoods and the others' ties to the Weirwoods. It's going to be the magical pinnacle of the story. So with most of these characters, we'll probably fight the others somewhere else. But some of them will journey north with Jon. Like Arya could definitely go north with Jon, right? Brienne, Sandor, Jaime, these are all people we're going to talk about. Blackfish. So let's go ahead and do this one on Wednesday, because Wednesday is usually the day that I stream apart from Sunday, and it's good to be consistent. So sorry to keep you waiting for 3 days, but it does work better for me to space them out a couple of days. That way, if I do 2 streams back to back, the first one won't get watched as much. So let's call this for Wednesday at same time, 3 o'clock Pacific. We will do this stream about the warriors of the Long Night. And then next Sunday, we'll go on to the battles and the foreshadowing of the battles. So once again, folks, I will thank you for coming out and ask you, please, there's 275 people watching. I would love it if each of you would just take a few seconds and leave a comment on the stream on the way out. You guys did great coming through for me last week. It really helped boost the video. When I say boost the video, guys, you're helping my career. That's what you're doing. You're helping my channel grow. You're helping my videos do better. You're helping me be able to pay my bills and have a little bit less stress so I can concentrate on writing a new script. So this is really a great way to help the channel if you don't have donations or, because not everybody obviously has extra income. I'm not a extra income guy. It's totally cool if you don't have PayPals and Super Chats. But the best way to support the show is leave a comment, like the video. So thanks, guys. I will go ahead and take a last call for questions. Got another 5 minutes if you guys want to fire off any last ones. But I just want to say, again, thank you very much for coming through for me last week. And I'll ask you to do it again. So, yeah. And yes, we're almost to 40,000 subs. So yeah, not on the chat. I mean in the comments of the video below the video. So I guess I should go ahead and end the video so you guys can leave a comment. And yes, if you have additional questions, I will answer them in the comments. I look at all the comments, guys, and I answer as many as I can. So thank you very much. This has been Where Are the Valyrian Steel Swords? I'll have to come up with a new title and screen cap for this stream. I'll put it on afterwards. But thank you all. You've been a great audience. It's been a lot of fun. And I will see you on Wednesday at 3 Pacific to talk about 30 or plus people that could be involved with the war for the Long Night.